Thank you all for coming to my session. I will talk about Drupal8 for Symfony developers. And before we start, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Perić-Mažar. I'm from Split, Croatia. I'm the CEO and the founder of Locastic, the development and design agency specialized in web and mobile development. Also, we founded the Symfony Croatia user group and Shift conference. We are in the market since 2011, and we are providing also training and consulting to our clients. Before we start, I have a few fun facts about me, about my company, about location here. So we actually support esports, so we have our Counter-Strike Go team. In our hometown, we actually have summer, so we don't have so much rain as here. And the fun fact, latest fun fact is that I had a birthday yesterday, so I'm almost a billionaire now, I think. Okay, so that is about me, about my company. I want to hear more about you. So I have a few questions. First, how many Drupal experts is here? Who's using Drupal? Okay, as a developers or site builders? Okay, Drupal8? Yep. Okay, good. Symfony developers? Okay, good. And Symfony developers without Drupal knowledge. Yeah, you are basically the most target group for this talk. So the title for this talk should be also the Drupal 101 for Symfony developers. And before we start, I want to say that I'm not the Drupal expert. I'm more in Symfony world, but because of the need for some projects, we start investigating some CMS solutions, and we find out that we can build some things with Drupal with our Symfony knowledge. So basically, the story starts in 2012 with this blog post when Fabien Potencier wrote that Drupal will start using Symfony, and this was the huge announcement. Before this, something else happened. That was the Easy Publish also started to use Symfony, but that was not so big news because Drupal has bigger community. It's more important in world of open source CMS solution. What this means for both communities? First, means that Drupal will not use the full stack Symfony. It will use some components, well, a lot of components, and that means that Drupal is moving to the more modern stack than it was in the past. It also means that Drupal won't do any more development of their framework. Well, partial components they will develop still, like forms, but they will use some already tested and good CMS as Symfony. Also, that means more learning for Drupal developers because, you know, in Drupal 6, Drupal 7, it was not object-oriented, it was not Symfony, so some new concepts, some new things, some better practices for development. Also, the most important thing was connecting two big communities, because in PHP, we all know that we have like a lot of communities and they all act like some islands. Like you have WordPress community, then you have Zen Framework community, then you have, I don't know, Laravel community. They all keep together, and the problem with PHP community is that we are quite separated. So this means like we got Easy Publish, Symfony, and Drupal connected around the Symfony. Also, partially Laravel is connected to the Symfony. So there is like, it's building one huge community, and if we can share knowledge, share resources or modules or libraries, whatever, it's an amazing thing for us as PHP developers. So who is it for? Drupal is for site administrators or content builders. So it is for developers, but at the end, any good site builder can build amazing things without even touching the code. And Symfony is for professional developers building the applications, any kind of applications, including the CMSs. So you can build whatever you want practically with the Symfony. The good thing with Drupal, you get caching, you got API, you got templating, a lot of helpers, a lot of things out of the box. So if you want, that is like advantage for the Drupal8. If we compare that to, for example, WordPress, you get much more things out of the box, like multi-language website, multi-websites, REST APIs, caching system, and things like that. In Drupal8, there are three types of different knowledge. First one is related to the Drupal, so it's things like nodes, fields, content types. So any Drupal developers that use Drupal in version 6, version 7 should be familiar with this. And there is Symfony part of knowledge. That is the new part. And there is Drupal8 part of knowledge, which is related to things like plugins and configuration management concepts that are introduced in version 8. In this talk, we will focus on Symfony part. We will see how Symfony components are integrated in the Drupal and how we can build a simple Hello module using using Symfony routing controllers, services, and events. So, Symfony full stack is on the left. So it's built from the bundles and the Symfony components, of course. And Drupal is on the right. We can see that at the bottom of Drupal8, we have Symfony components, we have Twig, and we have Drupal components. On top of that, Drupal core libraries are built, and on top of that, the core and contributed modules are built. Drupal is packed in distributions, same as Symfony, and then you can download distribution which you need for your project. These are the Symfony components that are used in Drupal8. So we can see that HTTP component, even dispatcher, dependency injection, CSS selector, and a lot of them are included. But for example, web profiler, Swift mailer, forms, browser kit are not included in Drupal8. How this works? This works on principle of dependency injection container, same as any other Symfony application. So the dependency injection container is the backbone of entire Drupal, and everything what's happening under the hood is related with dependency injection. So HTTP kernel, request response controllers, even dispatcher listeners, everything is connected to the dependency injection container. And from dependency injection container, you can get any service you want, and you can do whatever you want with that. Regarding development environment, so I will show you the process how to set up development environment, how to test Drupal, and then we will see how we can build simple module. First, if you want just to test the Drupal, you can go to the simplytest.me. You can install any version of Drupal, and you can just click it around. You have 30 minutes per instance. After that, your website will disappear, but it's quite good for showing the demo or testing. Second way is to download Acquia Dev Desktop. You get few things out of the box like MI, SQL Server, PHP, PHP-MyAdmin, Xmail Server if you are on a Windows, and Apache Web Server. So you can download this. You get even few distributions of PHP like PHP 5.6, PHP 7, I think. And you can just download this, and you can set up Drupal8 and start working. Of course, you can use any Symfony development environment. So PHP built-in server will work, Vagrant will work, or Docker, whatever you use. I prefer working with Vagrant machine with PHP 7.1, and it works perfect. Tools. Drush. Drush is a Drupal tool. It's a command line shell and Unix scripting interface for Drupal. And Drush core ships with a lot of useful commands that can help us maintaining, upgrading, backupping Drupal. Drush exists from version 7, I think, and you can see that you can download modules, enable modules, clear cache, and do that everything from the console. It's quite easy to install. You can install it globally via Composer, or you can install it local on your project with Composer again. So after you install that, you can do Drush status to see is Drush installed, and you can do Drush to get all the list of all command actions that you can run, and you can grep, for example, for only user actions. So you see that we have user block, user remove role, user cancel, user create, whatever. The new thing from Drupal8 is Drupal Console. It's built on top of Symfony Console. So if you go to the Drush is more shell tool, and Drupal Console is also terminal tool, but it's more in a way of Symfony Console with colors and everything else. It is, I told you, it is built on component of Symfony Console component. So Drupal Console has almost the same things as Drush, but has some additional things like generating console command, generating entity, generating content types, generating modules, running unit tests, and things like that. Again, it's quite easy to install via Composer to your project, or globally you can download the console launcher on your machine and then you can use it. It's quite easy to use it. You just need to write Drupal and you get the list, Drupal list, and you get, there is the command, Drupal list, and you get the list of all command actions that you can run. Of course, you can again search it. This is Drupal list grep module, so we can see there is generate modules, generate permission per module, module debug, module download, module install, module uninstall. It saves a lot of time when you are doing development, especially if you want, for example, create the CRUD for some entity. Then you need to create approximately about 20 files with routing, with CRUD, with defining the model and everything else. With command is just one line with few optional things. And of course, if you want to work with Drupal, I think the best tool for developing is PHP Storm. This is not paid advertised, this is just something I'm using that on every day. It has amazing Symfony support and it has amazing Drupal support, so it's quite good tool to use to develop the Drupal. Installation is quite easy. Once you download Drupal, you can download Drupal with Drush. So Drush DL Drupal will download the Drupal. You can install it with Composer, or you can download the zip file and then start working on it. I will show you with Composer because this is Symfony talk. So Composer is something that is native to all Symfony developers. So you can choose two packages. One is Drupal, that is core Drupal in a way how it is built. And this is Drupal Composer. Drupal project is the open source project, acts as a Kickstarter for Composer-based Drupal. The folder structure is little different in these two packages. The second one is maybe more as a Symfony way, and it has some pre-set up things that first one don't have. So in Drupal doc_root is repo of the root, and doc_root is subdirectory in Composer version. And we have scaffold files in Composer version, and we got Drush and Drupal out of the box. In this first version, we don't have Drush and Drupal. So if you want to start quickly, I think the second version is probably a better solution, but I just wanted to pick first one to show you what you need to think about. So Composer create project Drupal, and then we got everything download, vendors install, and we got our Composer JSON file. We need to add two things. First one is the block at the app, and second one is here. These two things enable us to download Drupal modules via Composer. So we can, after we add these two fields, we can Composer require Drupal / some module name, and we will get that module downloaded via Composer. And this line is important because you can see there is core /lib. It is not PSR4 standard. It's not SRC, but in this way, we can map Drupal legacy code to work with new stack. Probably, maybe, I don't know, in future, probably the Drupal will remove hooks and this lib folder, but for now, for version 8, this is how it works. After we did that, we can use Composer require, as I already told you. So, for example, this Composer require Drupal token will install token module, or you can just use console, Drupal module install token. It's much easier, it's much quicker, and you don't need to work with Composer. We all know that Composer can have a lot of problems when calculating dependencies and things. After that, you just run your website in the browser, you get the installation process, it's 4 or 5 clicks. I will just skip that, and after a while, you got your website working. So this is fully standard installation of Drupal with any additional except Drupal Console and Drush. It's, after a while, it's a minute or two to install new instance of Drupal. Okay, let's add some content to this. I will use console for that. So Drupal list grep create gives me all commands of I can use for creating the content. I will use create nodes. It asks me how many nodes I want to create. So I picked the basic page, 25.5, and I want them to be, I don't know, 3 years old, and generation is done in a matter of seconds. After that, we got some content, but something is missing, and probably all Symfony developers will notice that we don't have a profiler at the bottom. because it's not shipped in the core of Drupal, so we need to install it. There is a module called Devil, and we can install it via Composer, or we can install it with Console. And this is the module page, so you can see the status of development. For any module in Drupal, there is page with status, with latest commits and things happening there, some documentation. After we install the Devil, we enable the web profiler, or we can use drush pm enable Devil. This will save you a lot of time if you are doing often enable disable some modules, because you don't need to go to backend, click save. So every time you will save, I don't know, 5 seconds, and 5 seconds multiple 10 times per day is already 50 seconds and etc. Okay, after we install this, we got this beautiful Symfony web profiler down there, and we can start researching what's happening under the hood of our Drupal installation. So we can check this here. So we have some namespace, DVR, view page controller, and method handle. We have some root name. We have some response time. We have some database queries. We have logged user in. We can check that for the single page. So the response status is 200 OK. We are using node view controller here. This is from the core of Drupal. Entity node canonical is a root name, and we see that there is a lot of queries and a lot of the time to first byte is quite big, but because it's not cached. If we refresh the page, we see that under development it's also quite fast for one big system as a Drupal. So time to first byte on development was 175 milliseconds. We have 67 queries here. We had 200 plus at the first request, so it's pretty okay. Also, the query time for these 67 queries is around 6 milliseconds, which is quite nice. Okay, how it works under the hood. I will show you the folder organization, and then we will move to some custom modules. So under the hood, we got few folders, and we got this front-end controller. In front-end controller, you can see that is quite similar to Symfony one, but it doesn't use the Symfony kernel, it uses Drupal kernel. The reason why it is using Drupal kernel is because there are some additional events that are happening during the request, but still implements the Symfony interface for the kernel. In this folder, core are all core things from the Drupal. So all things that are shipped with the core version of Drupal are there, and you don't need, or you shouldn't need to write any code here. Because if you find some bug, if you want to fix something, you do contribution to the Drupal, and this is not the place where you should write your code. Second folder is modules folder. We have two types of folders there, contributed ones, that's the one that we download from the Drupal repositories, or the one that we create. And this is the folder where most of our work will be done if we are not building the theme. If we are building the theme, we have theme folder for that. Next one is profiles. Profiles is used if you want to do some custom things on installation of Drupal instance to your server. You can specify what do you want to do after the installation is done. So you can put that here. In the sites, we have default configuration, we have some services defined and some settings defined. We can define local services here for development, and we can define, if we have multi-websites, we can define settings different for every website. In theme folder, we are building our templates. We can twig, the Drupal use the version, Drupal8 use the twig as a templating system in version 8. Okay, request response. Request response in basic looks like a Symfony request response, so everything starts with a user request, and then we are resolving, from the roots we are resolving controller. When we got controller, we are resolving arguments, calling some actions, and making a response. Of course, it's not so simple, because a lot of things happening under the hood of the Drupal, and on every step we have event, same as in a Symfony application. So on request, after controller is resolved, before controller, before call controller action, before response on terminate on exception, for every part we have event. So what is actually happening? First, we are bootstrapping the configuration. How? We read the settings PHP file, generate some other settings dynamically, and store them both in global variables. After that, we start class loader, and after that we set up Drupal error handler. Detect if Drupal is actually installed. If yes, we can create Drupal kernel. Once we initialize the service container, and then we add container to Drupal static class, and we attempt to serve page from the static page cache. This is one of the critical things, because if we have page cached here, it will be served. So our request response is done there. If not, we need to load all variables and then move to load all necessary procedure, include files, register stream wrappers, create HTTP request object, let the Drupal kernel handle it, and send response back to the client. Of course, at the end, we terminate everything. So how it looks like? It looks like this. And these three actually rows here, columns, are same as in Symfony, or almost the same, this here. But this here is Drupal. And if I show you like this, it will be more clear. So as more as we go down, we are going to the end of request. As more as we are going right, we are going more deeper in a Drupal. And this is the most of magic is happening. Drupal has a renderer API and have some renderer handlers which can convert our arrays to the proper response that we can send back to the request. I can zoom that a little bit, but still this picture is, I don't know, I probably need 2 screens for her. But yeah, I have HTML renderer here, dialog renderer, model renderer, and Ajax renderer. If there is array response, there is question there, then this can convert to response and give it here. If there is no any request for format, Drupal will probably return the JSON format. So the pipeline looks like this. After the controller return renderer array, the view will trigger the HTTP kernel, because the controller result is not response. It is renderer array. Make content view subscriber is subscriber to view. It checks if whether the controller result is array. If yes, then tries to convert that to the response that we need. Any format for which main content renderer exists implements this main content renderer interface. If the request format is not supported, 406 JSON response is generated. If it is supported, it will return the requested format. And these are the 4 that we have in the core. So HTML, Ajax, dialog, and model. That was this part, sorry, this part here. Okay, and this is how implementation looks like. So we have class HTML renderer implements main content renderer interface, and we have method handle. Here, render response. We got some array. We convert that array to HTML response here, and this HTML response implements or extends the Symfony response. So at the end, this is the response of the Symfony, as HTTP component from the Symfony requires. So you know that every request in Symfony must return the response from the HTTP component. In simple way, that looks like this. When we hit our server, it first look up in renderer API cache. If page exists, it will return HTML. If page doesn't exist in cache, it will get HTML from template, and first we will try to twig cache. If that exists, it will render HTML from template, return to the user. If that miss, it will compile a twig template, then will render HTML from template and return the HTML. And this is something I used for sending the data as array. It's part of renderer API, and it uses arrays. It uses arrays because they are quite practical for parsing, for manipulating, for reading, for do whatever you want with them. And these are 3 elements in array.
In element 1, we have property markup. In element 2, we have property markup and element 2, and then property theme and items. And the front-end team should know how to render this array. How it works? It works in this way. We have this array here, and this describes the image. So the idea in Drupal is to separate view from the content. So you can get this content in mobile application and know how to render it, and you can get it in a twig template and know how to render it. So we are not sending from our controller, for example, we are not sending response in already pre-formatted HTML for the image. We are sending that as a set of the properties and values for this image. So this is converted to the image, and then this is served to the end user. This is final HTML when all is connected and rendered. This is how it works, actually. So in our custom module, we use element type renderer arrays to define the content. This is some type of file for the form here. This is first step. Second step is during the rendering, first elements are expanded to include default values for any empty properties. Then additional logic processes the element executing callbacks, manipulating properties depending on the application states. That is the second step. And in first step, we have the theme system. So at the first step, we are including theme. That results the array of the HTML. And this HTML is merged with all other HTML from other elements, and then the final output is our form. So that is the process how this rendering API works. Routing part. Routings are defined with YAML files. From perspective of Symfony developers, we have PHP, we have annotation, and we have YAML and XML configuration. Drupal for most things uses YAML, but for plugins, but we won't talk today about plugins, it uses annotation format. So if you look this route, it's quite similar to Symfony one, but has some additional things like permissions or default form, default title, and then there is no controller. Why? Because in the first we have controller and we have permission generate lorem ipsum. That's from one model where is custom permission is created. And that will work. We have model, we have action, it will return some template, that will work. Lorem ipsum form doesn't have controller because on the default is defined the form element. And Drupal knows if we define the form property, sorry, not element, if we define the form property, it knows to use form controller to render that form to end user. Also, this is something that we need to put for every route is permission. If you want to test some page, usually we put access content because from the default everyone can see the content. There are some default keys like controller, content form, entity form. I spoke about controller and form, and entity form and content works almost in the same way, but for different types. Available requirement keys are permission, method, role, scheme. So role is which user can access to that part. Method is it get, post, put, or some other method. And scheme, HTTPS or HTTP, node access, entity access, and format is MIME type, which you can use. Okay, controllers. Same as in Symfony, controllers are just some classes which can return which need to return some response. But we saw this renderer API, and we know that our controller can return some array. This is the most simple controller. It's just some action which return the object of type Symfony HTTP component response. This is if we are using the renderer API, we are returning some array with some property and some value. This will be converted to the events to response. Of course, there is class-based controller, which we can extend for our controllers, and then we get a lot of helper methods, a lot of services, access to container. And we need to notice that this controller base implements container injection interface, which is very important for dependency injection. Later, I will show you that in our custom controllers. And this is one example of service we can get, for example, current logins user or language manager, for example, here. You see that everything that is accessing as a services here or app is from container, dependency injection container. Okay? And this is the container injection interface. We see that had only one public static function, which is create, and which is used for factory pattern when our services are built to inject the things that we need. Services are from Symfony components, so they are the same as in Symfony. You need to define ID or name of the service, class, arguments that you want to inject, and you can tag it to some context. You can, with console, you can list, so this is Drupal COD, like container debug shortcut, and this is grep user, so these are some services that are related to the user, like access check user, login status user, authentication cookie, and things like that. Events and listeners. I think this is one of the most important improvement in Drupal8, because in Drupal 7 we have hooks, which are global functions that you can access anywhere in your code. In Symfony we have subscribers and listeners, which subscribe to some event and then do some code only when that events happen. In Drupal, you can do that in the same way as in your Symfony application. So you need to create your service, you need to tag it with event subscriber, and then you need to create your class which implements event subscriber interface. After that, you just need to define which events you want to hook on, and when that event occurs, your code will get executed. So this is the example of some event subscriber. So we create events example subscriber, which is class Drup events example, event subscriber, event example subscriber. So this is from custom module event example, and it tags event subscriber. If we go inside the code, we see that we are hooking to two custom events, which happens on a new report, and we have two methods that are called notify Mario and notify Batman. Then we have two methods that have the same name as in arrays, and if event get type is Joker, we will notify Batman. If event type is stolen princess, we will notify Mario for that princess is stolen. Okay, now I will show you how to create the simple Hello Symfony custom module. We will create simple root, simple controller response, service, and event subscriber inside our module. These are the things that you need to do when you are creating your model. So first you need to create module name.info.yaml file for describe your module. And the second thing, you need to build routing controllers. Of course, when you are changing something in configuration, you need to clear cache, and then you can test it, does it work. First, we will start with Hello Symfony info YAML. So the convention for creating names of module is this, so snake with underscores. So Hello Symfony will be the folder name where our module is stored, and this will be the prefix for almost all configuration things for our module. So this is how file looks like. So we have name, we have description, we have some package type and core, then we have some dependencies, test dependencies, lowest PHP version that is support, is it hidden, and what is the version of the module. We don't need to, for this simple module, we just need to define all these 5 things. So we need to say the name is Hello Symfony, the type is module, some description of our module, where to sort it in the backend, and which core of Drupal is supported. Here is the architecture, here is the structure of how this should like. So we have modules, inside modules we have Hello Symfony folder, inside that we have Hello Symfony info YAML file. Once when we created this, we can find our module in backend of Drupal, and we can install it. Nothing will happen because this module doesn't do anything at the moment, but actually you created your first module, you install it, but he doesn't have any function at the moment. After this, we will create some routing. So Hello Symfony page example route, which has path example, page example, and which has this controller action as desired action for our route, and this permission as access content. Regarding the links for your modules, there are 3 or 4 type of links. One is where you define all the routing for your this routing.yaml file, and this is type of links you can define for your module. So this is menu link, this is the local tasks links, and this is the action links. It's quite easy. You don't need to use hooks anymore as before. You just need to use proper files. So instead of using menu default local task hook, model name links.task YAML, model name links action, and model name links menu YAML file. And this is how to define for the menu. So you just put the title, put the root name, and you can add some other configuration things, and then you get it under the menu. So it's quite easy. And page example controller looks like this. So we already saw that. I created just simple response hello Symfony world, and if I clear the cache and try to access my root, I will get this. So it works. I changed that to use renderer API. So I want to send title, I want to send markup, and then this will look like this. So in this way, entire Drupal template is included, but in content part of the page, my title and my markup is rendered. And you can see in a web profiler that our controller is used and our root is used for this. This can be a little more complex. For example, if you want to render the table using renderer API, it looks like this. I add some title, I set the type to the table, there is caption header, 5 rows, and description of the table. And if we refresh the page, you will get this rendered on our page view. Of course, we can extend controller base, and we can access to the services. I already showed you that in previous examples. So I extended the controller base here, and I get this current user helper method to get current user service, and I get the display name of the user, and I want to say hello to the login user. So it will be hello admin in this situation. And now I will show you how we can refactor this with dependency injection and the services. So basically, if you want to use dependency injection in your container, if you don't want to extend the entire controller base, or you don't want to inject entire container, you need to do this. You need to implement container injection interface at the top, and then you need to create construct function which will accept the services you want to inject. Of course, you create your action, and you need to implement this public static function, create, which gets container as argument. Then you return new static and inject only the services you wanted to inject in your construct method. That is all what you need to do. There is no specification, there is no writing any services or anything, just do this. And result of this will be the same as before. Just we didn't extend the entire controller base, and we didn't need to have entire container injected to our controller. If we want to create our services, again, we create hello Symfony services.yaml file, and we create definition for our service. So ID and name of the services is hello Symfony hello service. Class is hello service, in namespace hello Symfony service, and we are injecting current user service inside it. This class looks like this. So we have constructor method which accepts current user. We set up the current user, and we have some very stupid method, say hello, and return hello name. Now in our controller, we will inject our service with ID that we define in our services file, and we can use it in this way. So this hello service, say hello, will do the same thing, and result will be again hello admin. Okay. Regarding the events, I will create one simple, very simple event that hooks to the request and returns site is under maintenance. So that's first event that occurs on the kernel request, and then we just return the response, terminate or other events, and our request is completed. So we need to define new service. We need to tag it with event subscriber, same as Symfony. After that, we need to create this class, which is our subscriber. We need to implement event subscriber interface, and we need to subscribe to some events. I want to subscribe to this kernel events request and execute the on-kernel request method once the event occurred. I do only event set response, so I'm setting response for this event. New response site is under maintenance, and I want to stop propagation of this on any other event. So this is what will happen. When I request my website, I will just get the message site is under maintenance. Because I hooked on the first event, I respond that with response, and that's all. Small recap what we did today. So we learned that Drupal is built on top of Symfony components, and that we can use our knowledge to build some custom things with Drupal in Symfony way. But still, there is a lot of things that you need to learn from Drupal, like Drupal APIs. For example, Entity API, because Drupal is not using Doctrine, that's obviously. Drupal Forms, Drupal Security Authentication API, Validation API, and things like that. There is, I don't know, maybe 20 APIs in Drupal that you need to learn if you want to build more complex and more advanced things with Drupal. But the good way, under the hood, it acts like your Symfony applications. You have events, you have controllers, you have routes, you have some response. So it's always the same story. Events are changing the hooks, but still not in 100%. So for a lot of things at the moment, you still need to use hooks, for example, for connecting module with templating system. Hardest thing is to start. Once when you start, you will start digging through the code because documentation is not so good. There is not so much advanced tutorials how to build custom modules, but there is a lot of examples in the core, in contributed models, in some advanced models that are already built and moved to Drupal8, so you can read the code. You saw in these examples there is quite good documentation of the code inside the code, so you will probably spend a lot of time digging inside it. The future of Drupal, I don't know what will happen. Probably they will move more to the Symfony stack, but who knows in the future, will it be ever the full stack Symfony, or they still will keep some other things. And of course, this is a very good thing because the Drupal developers, Drupal core developers can focus on developing amazing CMF solution, and Symfony can focus on that to building even greater framework. That's all. Okay, thank you very much.